dun 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 dun.
Keep it going, keep going. Welcome to the only podcast about movies. My name is Matthew Kroll, and this beautiful voice,
Shahir Doubt.
And this week we will be talking about the film Terminator Genisys, or how does it pronounce? Terminator
Genisys.
Genisys. I don't know. Every time I hear it, Terminator Genisys. We're not dummies, but every time I hear it, I can't help but think Sega.
Oh, Sega.
Well, that was when you turned on a Sega game, but in the commercials, in the American commercials, sorry, Shahir, it was extreme, and it always ended with Sega.
Fun fact, in New Zealand, the Genesis was called the Mega Drive.
But there was a Mega Drive here.
Oh, really?
Yeah, no, the Mega Drive is a different system than the Genesis.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe you didn't get the Genesis.
Do you think the next Terminator movie should be called Terminator Mega Drive?
Terminator Mega Drive, they're going back in time. What?
Terminator Atari.
Anyway, yeah, we're the only podcast about Terminator Genisys, and I'm really excited about that.
I have a lot to say about Terminator.
Because no one is talking about it, and I feel like it's our duty. We've been away for 2 weeks. Sorry, we've been very busy. And actually, if you think about it this way, we actually did 2 podcasts 1 week, so we're not actually behind. And also, you had a pretty good excuse, and something that ties in with this film in a very minor way.
In a minor way, I was directing a music video over the last week, which involved robots. Not the killer kind,
right?
Not the time-traveling kind either, and not the funny one-liner kind either. They were just robots that performed. And you'll see that maybe in a few months' time.
Sure. So you were dealing with robots, and so that you're doing your own form of research before seeing this film, experiencing it, and then coming on to talk about it. That's what I'm going to say to make ourselves feel better. Also, guys, we still have, before we get into it, we have two new sets of movie tickets that you can get free for yourself to go see whatever film you'd like. Maybe this one, maybe another one. If you just email us at onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com, and we like your response, we give them to you. It's real easy.
Well, there's a little caveat to that, which is your game plan here, which I kind of like, which is that if you go see any movie, give us like a 20, 30-second review, record it on your iPhone, and send it in to us.
Yeah, and we will put it on the show, and you'll be famous.
Famous like us.
Yeah.
What's your name again?
Yeah, my name is Matthew Kroll.
Kroll.
What was that?
I don't know. I was the echo chamber for your fame.
Oh, what's your name again? I get it. Yeah. Real nice, Shahir.
Yeah, that's what I do.
Anyway, it's impossible to talk about Terminator Genisys without talking about the franchise as a whole, and obviously its ilk and previous sort of in versions.
There are now 5 Terminator.
There are 5 Terminator films. That's nuts.
Yeah. And we've talked a lot about Terminator 2.
Yes. It's obviously, I mean, you can't argue it's the best summer blockbuster and best, in my opinion, best action movie ever made. It has sort of all of the things that I look for in a movie in general, but it just happens to be a badass action movie as well.
Yeah, it's an incredible film. If you think about it from a technological point of view, what he was managed to do with what James Cameron managed to do with the T-1000 in that film still is amazing today.
Yeah.
And I would argue still better than anything the 3 preceding films have managed to accomplish. And then look at it from a storytelling point of view, is that he took a sort of a quick exploitational film that he made, many years earlier, and exploded everything about it. He didn't do a sequel just for the sake of doing a sequel. Right. Well, you could argue maybe that was the intention, but he really took that story and exploded it out and made it bigger and made it, like, to me, that's a sequel that has a reason to exist.
Sure. Yeah, no, he took, and even if it came from a place, I don't know if it was something, a passion project that he wanted to continue, or if it was a studio being like, we need a big action movie. Let's do Terminator 2. Like, I don't know, like, where it sort of came from, but either way, he took what could have just been a cash grab, and
he's a real filmmaker
and turned it into a real film. And some might argue too that Terminator 2 is kind of the baby that helped push along the sequel-itis that we're all sort of feeling.
Probably.
Because it took an average sort of horror sci-fi movie that's very good in its own right, but it wasn't like, it didn't blow open the box office when it was released, and turned it into this crazy special thing, so that I think studios started seeing that and like, wow, if we just sort of do sequels and maybe expand on characters, people like, this could be a whole thing. And then
and like time travelers, look at the ramifications of that. This summer is
the butterfly effect.
This summer is Jurassic World, Mad Max Fury Road, Terminator Genisys. What other sequels that come? I mean, it's all sequels now, right?
Yeah.
Like
I mean, even
Pitch Perfect
Avengers
2,
too. Yeah.
Avengers. it's all about sequels now. There's, very few, like original properties. And this was actually a little quick, so we were talking about we were away for a week. I did actually see a second movie, and I'm going to give a quick 30-second review of it.
Oh, go for it.
Inside Out. Go see it. It's awesome. It's a return to form for Pixar, whose films had been waning of late. It is smart, entertaining, thrilling, and it does something amazing, which is it takes a really unique idea and manages to turn it into a whole story. There are problems with it that I would love to discuss on a later podcast, but I'm not going to get into that. Inside Out. Go see it.
Oh, I'm sorry, Shahir. Does it have Arnold Schwarzenegger in it?
I think there's an Arnold
Then I
joke.
don't give a shit. No, I'm sure it's wonderful, and I do want to go see it.
You should see it. It'll warm the cockles of your heart.
But that's a movie for kids, and let's
No.
Well, it's a kids. No, it's a kids movie. It's made for a kids movie, but it can also be enjoyed by adults.
I would argue, and you
I haven't seen it, so
you
I'm
haven't
arguing
seen it.
against it.
Yeah, I would argue it's a movie made for adults that happens to be enjoyed for kids. It really is for adults.
Sure. But let's talk about real quick. So Terminator 2, we talked about how it was special to us, and it's something that it holds up today. I think that's an important sort of
Oh, without a doubt.
caveat. And it whether I really feel like you could show it to not a kid because that's too young, but also I think I saw it when I was 11.
Yeah. I think I'm a little bit older than you, so
Yeah.
I probably saw it when I was 12 or 13.
Terminator 2 was the first film I ever cried at. I didn't know movies could make you cry.
Wow. No, definitely not the first film I cried at. I don't think I cried in it, actually.
I did. When Arnold gets lowered into the whole thing, I don't know. And also it might have to do with my dad has especially in his younger days had a very sort of Arnold-esque presence to him. So it was very this is a dad father son movie, which it totally is, but it rung true for me. So yeah, I think as adults, obviously even today, it still holds up.
Well, I mean, now that you're mentioning kids at it, there was an interesting thing when I went and saw Terminator Genisys, which was that I went to a late screening. It was like a 10 o'clock screening, so it got out about
bad boy.
It got out about 12:30, 1 o'clock, and there were two 8-year-old girls with their parents with their mother at the movie. Now, there's a lot of question marks I have about taking an 8-year-old girl to a Terminator movie. I'm taking any 8-year-old to a Terminator movie. And I actually had a really interesting Facebook discussion today with a friend of mine who has a 4-year-old son who he takes to Jurassic World, for example.
Okay.
So there are lots of question marks about whether you should take a kid to this kind of movie. But I know you and I both saw Terminator 2 probably at an age that we were too young to see that film, right?
Here's the thing. Yes, but also I don't think kids are all different. You can't say a 7-year-old can't see it, but an 8-year-old can.
Yeah.
I have no problem if you're a parent and you want to show a kid a movie and then talk with them about the movie and, sort of have a dialogue and don't just have it be whatever. Don't take a kid to a harder movie sort of like this if you can't find a sitter. That's bullshit.
Yeah.
If you believe that you want to show them something you like and sort of experience it and explain it to them, that's one thing.
Yeah.
But and also this is bigger for me because I don't have children.
Yeah.
You need to make sure that your child can handle being in the theater for that kind of movie or in general. Because if they can't, then you don't bring them to the fucking theater because you are ruining the entire thing for a ton of other people in the thing.
Sure. That is an issue.
But these girls were quiet. They were well behaved.
I didn't notice them until after the movie.
I see.
To that point, the conversation I was having with the friend of mine on Facebook was interesting because that person was saying that their 4-year-old had seen The Dark Knight, for example, and was totally fine with Heath Ledger, the scary Joker, was totally fine with Jurassic World with dinosaurs eating people, but saw Inside Out this week and didn't like that because it was too sad and didn't want to talk about that because it was too sad. And I thought that was a really
interesting.
That was a really interesting thing because that film, Inside Out, is an emotional gut punch.
Yeah.
And for a kid to respond to that without really disliking that experience, but being able to absorb violence in that way is it's problematic. But again, not every kid is the same. Every kid is a different kid.
I also think there are points there's bits of that are deeply troubling and also kind of calming in a sense that it all breaks down to the parenting. If you're talking to your kid about it, then and they don't have a problem with a scary character or violence or whatever, that's great. They shouldn't. You could talk to them about it. I don't want them to be desensitized to it, but you should have discussions. Whereas I'm really kind of sad that if something is sad and not easy to talk about, that too isn't also being sort of brought to the forefront and still talked about with your kid. Like, violence shouldn't be easy to talk about, but you should still talk about it. Sadness isn't really easy to talk about, but you should talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna sit in judgment of this person.
No.
They're a friend, and
it's also Facebook. So
yeah, it's Facebook, and like I say, every kid is different. Every kid has a different response to a film. But I guess my main takeaway that I thought about as I walked out of the film and I saw these 2 8-year-old girls was that it's potentially a disservice to take an 8-year-old to a film like this, which is full of violence, in a profound way.
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing, and we can kind of go backwards and forwards on that, and I'm 50-50 on it as well. My biggest thing is I think we're doing a disservice to these kids by giving them films like Terminator Genisys, which is not a good film. Whereas when you and I went to films, like we had Jurassic Park and Terminator 2. Now these kids have Jurassic World and Terminator Genisys. Now, that's not to say every film needs to be good. You and I both talked about Masters of the Universe, which is a bad film, but we both enjoyed it as kids. So I don't
think it's a bad film.
Masters of the Universe?
I don't think Masters of the Universe is a bad film because it's enjoyable. That's where our things that's where our opinions
you and I,
differ.
Yeah. If there's an overrunning theme to this podcast, it's your and I approach to those kinds of films. Mm-hmm. But I think if these kids are growing up on Jurassic World and Terminator Genisys, then I think that's a sadder indictment than an 8-year-old going to a violent movie.
I don't think it is, and here's sort of why. When I was, this is hard to say or quantify, and maybe you're absolutely right. My sort of initial gut reaction to that statement is, one, it kind of sounded like an old man.
I am starting to sound like an old man.
But
yeah, it used to be better back in my day.
I remember when there were silent films. No, but I think there's a lot of validity to what you're saying. I think when I was younger, maybe because, like, say, Terminator 2 was so good.
And it still holds up.
I think that maybe, I cried at it and I had an emotional reaction to it, and I'll always remember that, and that's like a thing for me in my film. And yes, is it Terminator Genisys going to do any of that for a kid these days? No.
Yeah.
But I'm going to go sort of on the other side of it and say, when I saw Jurassic Park as a kid, I wasn't gleaning the deeper meanings that maybe I was gleaning in Terminator 2 because it was a little more fantastical and it's a little harder to follow. I mean, if you're looking at the theoretical, the higher brain level of what Jurassic Park is, than what the higher brain level of Terminator 2 is.
Yeah. I guess I'm just.
So wait, hold on. Let me just finish my thought. So basically, what I'm saying is, Jurassic Park says a lot. Yeah. But when I was a kid, I didn't give a fuck. I wanted dinosaurs, and I saw awesome dinosaurs and kids being chased by them, and I could experience it and whatever. I feel like kids are still getting the same experience out of these, for the most part, out of these new ones. However, they will not have the joy that of growing up and watching them and being like, this film is saying so fucking much. Like, this is amazing. I enjoyed it so much when I was younger, and now I'm enjoying it on a whole new level. These films won't do that, but I think they can still have the joy initially.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think every kid is different, and there is joy to, and I guess my point with the Masters of the Universe thing was that there is joy to be had in watching films as a kid, right? What I do think is sad, just taking those two franchises as examples, is that Jurassic Park and Terminator 2 are films of a lifetime. By very talented, one in a million kind of filmmakers. I feel like Jurassic World and Terminator Genisys are sausage factory films.
But also look at it this way. We also have films that kids are going to look at as their childhood films that are not these franchises that are going to do this. Frozen is going to be a benchmark. Yeah. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
And the way it takes the whole Disney process and flips it on its head and makes it work and makes it feel original and fun and good and has some positive things to say. It's a great film that kids who watched it when they were young are going to watch it and see all the things that it did, all the subversion that it did, and it'll still hang in that balance. Even to the point, and a lesser point, but something similar, Guardians of the Galaxy is now Star Wars. For kids. It kind of is. Like, there's the Clone Wars cartoons and a bunch of other shit, but now Guardians is like the quintessential space action opera thing.
Sure.
And look, I mean, it's until the new Star Wars comes out, the prequels weren't doing it.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying, like, kids are going to have these experiences elsewhere.
Yeah, and I
just
hope
not,
they do as
and
well.
it's disappointing to us, I think, because they're not going to have it with the franchises that we love, and that does the whole circle of life thing where the kids are going to be liking different things and
hopefully
different
enjoying different things. I guess the problem there is that studios are continuing to produce these films, probably in an effort to kind of recapture that feeling, and they're just doing it wrong.
I don't think they're trying to recapture that feeling. I think they're trying to cash in on that feeling, and I think that's the difference.
Yeah.
But hold
doing it
on,
wrong.
we've been talking for about 16 minutes now, a little bit less. About all of these sort of bigger ideas. We should, since we're the only podcast talking about Terminator Genisys.
Let's tell you a little bit about Terminator Genisys.
Let's talk about Terminator Genisys. You want to give us a synopsis, if you will?
All right, so Terminator Genisys basically picks up where Terminator 1 started, but from the point of view of being in the future. So if you recall Terminator 1, John Connor, the
savior of the human race.
Savior of the human race, the guy who is going to lead the uprising against the machines, sends a human being by the name of Kyle Reese back into the past to protect his mother in 1984 because the machines have sent a Terminator back into the past to kill his mother, and therefore in present day 1984 a battle between man and machine continues. In Terminator Genisys, we start at that point. We're in the future now. We never really saw the future in Terminator 1. We saw
very briefly and flash forwards.
Yeah, and in Terminator Genisys we start full blown in that war where John Connor captures the facility where the time machine is being housed. Now, the whole process continues, and this is a funny thing because it's like 20 minutes of this, and it's like we've seen all this stuff happen. We know what's going to happen.
You know, you haven't seen, yeah.
So Kyle Reese gets sent back into the past. He's now in 1984, and just as he is about to start his saving Sarah Connor business, Sarah Connor pops out, and she is not the Sarah Connor we remember from Terminator 1.
And she saves him.
And she gets out of the line, "Come with me if you want to live."
Which, yeah.
And so basically what we realize is the entire timeline from Terminator 1 has been flipped, and an alternate universe and an alternate timeline has begun where Sarah Connor is now protected by a Terminator that she has known since she was a little girl, whom she calls Pops, who looks oddly like an older version of Arnold Schwarzenegger. And now they have to try and figure out how to stop Judgment Day in this new alternate timeline.
Yes. Now, there's a reason in the film, and I guess now's to the point, you kind of go gleaning sort of our opinions about it, that we'll be starting to do some spoilers here, so I think it's kind of important that you know as we go further, the spoilers get deeper.
Spoiler.
There's a moment in the first bit of the film where when Kyle Reese is going back in time, there's a defining moment of the film where a very little seen Doctor Who comes up behind John
Smith?
Connor, as Kyle Reese is being thrown into the timeline and does something to John Connor that you're not quite sure what he does. It's almost like an attack. Kyle Reese witnesses this, and because he witnesses this, his consciousness is split between the current timeline and this new timeline, so he's starting to have memories from both timelines. And that's why he has a little bit of prolific information in this new timeline.
Very convenient.
To move this forward. No, I'm not mad at that. If you want to get into the way time travel is handled in the Terminator films, that could fit in there fine. It can.
Sure.
I have a couple other problems with how they do things in this film, but that one is not one of them. I think that's a very clever way to take what you're expecting and throw it on its head. And actually,
it's like what Star Trek did.
It's exactly what Star Trek did. Only this time, where they did it with a lot of sort of nuance, I feel, to get to the point in Star Trek.
Yeah.
This one just blatantly boom, this is what it is.
Yeah, it starts where Star Trek ended.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
If you want to get to, are you following us, audience?
There's a lot of difficulty comprehending what's happening in this film.
Yeah. Well, no. See, here's the thing, and we could get into the after I say this. Let's get into our overall thoughts. Mm-hmm. It's not a complicated film to follow because the way the script is written just throws exposition at you and hopes some of it sticks to a wall. Like there's just scenes of people spouting scientific bullshit time travel nonsense crap.
Theoretically.
Which that's a fun runner joke. I don't even give a shit. But like it's going to beat you over the head. It's not going to let you even remotely think for yourself at all. And it's going to be like, nope, this is how it works. Oh, why does it work? It works like this because science, motherfucker. And it's, whatever. I don't particularly like that approach. I think I like it when it's more nuanced, etc. But Shahir, let's just before we get into the writing and the whole thing, what did you think? If I had to, I mean, I already know, but tell the people what you thought of Terminator Genisys.
I think what you thought is probably going to be more interesting to me than what I think to you.
What?
This movie made me very sad.
Aw.
It made me very, very sad. What James Cameron did with Terminator 2 was so good, and no one has been able to replicate it.
Nope.
And the fact, I struggle. I feel like what they've done with Terminator now is they've had 3 attempts at basically trying to move this franchise on. They had Terminator 3, which was basically like, let's try and continue what happened in Terminator 2 and build a bigger story. Nope, didn't work. All right, it didn't work. Let's try Terminator Salvation. Well, and, the idea with Terminator Salvation was they were going to do another trilogy. Let's do the story of John Connor in the future and not do any time travel and do this post-apocalyptic, like, what is happening with the machines? How does the war evolve? Didn't work out.
Nope, because sadly, none of that is interesting.
I actually don't mind Terminator Salvation.
It's not interesting, though. Like, if you look at this bland sort of world that they paint, it's cool and it's, like, edgy because it's put against, when in Terminator 2, even Terminator 3, Terminator 1, this movie, Terminator Genisys, it puts this fucking shithole of an existence up against current day, we're still aliveness. And that stark contrast makes it interesting. I thought 2 hours of living in that world, I was just like, oh, fuck.
I didn't hate the film, though. I think there are problems with it, obviously, and I think this idea of like trying to build a trilogy is really problematic, and that was to me was the biggest problem with Terminator Salvation. But so that didn't work out, and here we go again. Let's try and crack it again. And as far as box office numbers goes, this is a pretty abysmal failure.
Right? What did it get? Do you know?
It's in the vicinity of $40 million for a $155 million film. So this is the third stab at trying to bring this franchise back, and I'm like, guys, why are we doing this? What more in the Terminator universe? I mean, there are more stories that could be told, but you're doing it so badly by now that it's like, let's let it go. And I think the reason why people want to do this is because you have a finite timeline with the biggest icon of the Terminator franchise.
Oh, yeah.
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah.
So it's like every time, except for Terminator Salvation, which is why I kind of dug Terminator Salvation. It was kind of like, let's move this story on without the icon and let's do something else.
Which he was still there.
He was still in it as well. Yeah, that's the irony of it. But so there's just something sad, and it's like Terminator Genisys to me is like the old guy at a barbecue who's trying to tell you how amazing he was back in the day and just like making you annoyed by his presence. It's like,
wow.
It's like, oh, remember that cool thing we did back in 1991? It was amazing, wasn't it? Here, let me retell that story for you. And it's like, it's just sad. It's like, I don't need to see this. I don't know why it exists. And there's the production, the quality of, Megan Ellison, the sort of uber producer who's been like championing independent cinema films like American Hustle, The Grandmaster, her, difficult films that have struggled getting financing. She's the one behind, pushing this film, and I'm not, and it just feels like a cash grab. Like, hey, there was this thing that made a lot of money. There's this property. Let's build it. Let's make a franchise out of it. And I'm like, why? It doesn't feel like there's any reason for this film to exist.
Okay, so you didn't like it.
It just made me sad.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
I liked it, again, with many caveats, because as we'll get into sort of the specifics, there's no way I would trust any movie critic that said this was a great film. It's not a great film. I enjoyed seeing it. So let's sort of, to describe how I feel about the film, let's sort of go back to your old guy at the barbecue scenario, your analogy. Where you see that old dude, and I've experienced sort of what you're saying, being like, oh man, blah 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 blah, and trying to, like, what you described and what you said were two different things. You described an old man trying to recapture his glory days through a story at a barbecue.
Yeah.
I've seen old men or old people sort of try to act young at a barbecue. That's not the same thing as recounting a story. And when I see someone old trying to act young, hell, when I see someone young trying to act old, that's sad. That's like, that's embarrassing to yourself.
Yeah.
This isn't that to me. You're absolutely right. The reason this exists, one of the main reasons, is because we only have so much time where Arnold Schwarzenegger can play the Terminator. That's what it is. And I see, especially, and I'll go on point on this, I really liked Arnold's Terminator in this movie. Now, again, it's not going to pull the heartstrings of the way Terminator 2 did for me, or still does, but it's one of those things that because the character of his Terminator in Terminator 2 was such a iconic sort of thing for me, and it could be the nostalgia bug too, is really helping me along, but it doesn't change the fact that I will still go see and enjoy, for the most part, a film with this character or a character that's similar. We're not quite sure, whatever. Like, they did enough explanation in the film for me to be like, oh, that's why he looks old. It made enough sense that the flesh in the Terminators is still it's human flesh, and it's still gonna age. That's fine.
Yeah.
And I really like seeing him be the Terminator. And as long as the film is, to me, good. I would love it if it was another prolific thing. It would be amazing. But as long as the film is serviceable. And I know you don't like hearing that sort of thing, but as long as the Terminator film is serviceable and it has Arnold Schwarzenegger being fucking awesome in it, then I don't care and I like it. I don't love it, I like it.
Yeah.
And I think there's room for it, though I do agree back when what you said. It is, I would love for the Terminator franchise to be something that kids look at and can grow with like we did.
Yeah.
But I also realize that that's not going to be the case.
It's not going to be the case, and it just feels like there's no unique voice. Like I agree with you. I like seeing Arnold Schwarzenegger play the Terminator. But the thing that made that good was that, Arnold Schwarzenegger isn't the greatest actor in the world. He's pretty good at doing what he does.
No.
And
he's the best.
The thing about James Cameron was he brought out the best in what that character was. He put that character in a great film.
He brought out the best in Arnold Schwarzenegger because he did True Lies too, right?
Which is a film I don't love, but
you get it. Fuck you. That movie is awesome. That movie is awesome. Again, but he plays to Arnold's strengths.
He does
in
play
the movies.
And I would argue a True Lies, which is a film I don't love, at least that has passion behind it. At least that feels like he's going all in.
Sure.
It feels probably a little. The thing to me is it feels like it's a dated film, even when I watch that. But I still feel like James Cameron is pushing the boundary of what can be done. And I feel like maybe True Lies is not a great example of that, but Terminator 2 certainly is. And I wish that if you have a limited amount of time left with Arnold Schwarzenegger to be able to play this iconic role, which is whatever, as an acting role, do a good film with him. Like, really,
do a great film with him.
Do a great film. Like, really, look, honestly, this might be the last time we see Arnold Schwarzenegger play the Terminator.
I truly believe it is the last time we'll see Arnold play the Terminator.
And isn't that sad?
No.
It is. To me, it's
not
sad.
Really.
Well, okay. No, it's not sad because we still have Terminator 2 to hold on to.
Yeah.
And the Terminator. But I think we've had 3 films now where people have just got it wrong and aren't doing it well. And I'm like, why are we still doing this?
I think people are still,
If the only reason is just to be serviceable, then I think that is a good enough reason to hang up the spurs.
Sure. And you know what? I can't argue with that on any particular point. What I will say is I do think that when Terminator Genisys was coming up through the ranks and wherever the script came from or wherever the idea happened, whatever, someone had an amazing idea of what to do with the timeline, which overall, and we can get into this now, I think the overall story arc of Terminator Genisys is great.
I don't disagree with that.
The arc, and I even saw this, and you didn't watch the trailers.
Yeah,
that was the thing. I watched the trailers and I saw the arc and I'm like, that's amazing. I don't think they're going to be able to pull it off because you're really shooting like a high bar. Like, you need to be an expert filmmaker to take, especially time travel, which is so fucking mind bent to begin with.
Yeah.
But like, I saw the arc of it and I was like, that's so interesting and I can see why this is happening, but I don't think it's going to work because I don't think the people behind it can do it.
Well, actually, I have to admit, when they did the alternate timeline thing at the beginning, when because I'd avoided all the trailers, and, just as an aside, boy, am I glad I avoided all the trailers because I went back and watched the trailer after I'd seen the movie and boy, dude, they reveal everything in that trailer.
Well, there's a long history of this franchise of revealing everything in the trailers.
But literally everything.
Yeah, well, no, Terminator 2 gave away everything.
Yeah, and I was like, how could you possibly, like, James Cameron came and did an interview recently where he was talking about his experience of watching the film, and he was like glowing, he
liked it a lot.
He was overwhelmingly positive about it. But I went and watched that again, and the way he described it was as though the revelation that there were two Arnies in the past was completely, like, he didn't know that was coming.
Yeah.
And if you could watch this film with that in mind, and that wasn't my experience because the marketing was out there. Even though I didn't watch the trailers, I knew that was what was going to happen. If you watch this film and that happened, like we were in Arnold. Although, as I'm saying that out loud, of course something had to happen because otherwise they're just playing the first film out from a different point of view. But at any rate, if that had happened and you were watching, you might be like, oh, wow, and you might get sucked into a story. But everything after that moment.
Well, can you imagine seeing Terminator 2 and not knowing that Arnold is the good guy? Because if you watch that movie with that sort of in mind, the first third of that film is set up where you don't, specifically crafted by James Cameron so that you do not know who is the good Terminator.
Yeah.
You don't know. You have no fucking clue.
You don't even realize that that the T-1000 is a machine until he gets shot.
Yeah.
It looks like a human.
So then, at that moment of get down, that's when it's twisted. Could you imagine going into that film and only knowing Terminator 1 and just being like, holy shit. Like that whole advertising campaign of Terminator 2, like I get why they did it because Arnold was such a huge star.
Yeah.
And
it drummed up a lot. Like I was a 12-year-old kid who wasn't into Terminator, but I saw that trailer and I was like, I want to see this movie.
Right. So I get from that point of view why they did it, but oh man, it would have been great. In this movie, there's a reveal in the trailer, so this isn't even spoiling anything, that John Connor actually comes back from the future in this alternate timeline and has been turned into a specific kind of a Terminator. It's sort of version of a Terminator.
I actually didn't see that like I didn't know about him coming back and the thing happening. So that was somewhat of a surprise.
Yeah, how did that? So there's a scene. So there's sort of a similar scene with not that same amount of build to it.
Yeah.
When John Connor comes back and they're in a parking garage and the Terminator, like it's Kyle Reese, Sarah Connor, and John Connor having a weird ass conversation.
Yeah.
And then Arnold walks up and just blasts John Connor in the chest.
Yeah.
And he hits the ground and he starts bleeding out and people start freaking out. How did that moment hit you before the twist where the blood starts turning all digital and whatever and he comes back to life?
I didn't know that was going to happen, but it didn't surprise me in any way. Like at that point, I had kind of gleaned that this wasn't a film of quality, and I wasn't, and here's the thing: think about the scene in Terminator 2 when Sarah Connor and John Connor had their first moment together.
Yep, in the hospital.
No, even after that, when they've escaped from the hospital and they're together, and she's checking him for bullet holes.
In the car?
Yeah, in the car, and like. John thinks she's coming in for a hug, and she holds him for a second, then she checks him for bullet holes and starts going into a crazy thing. And there's so much subtext to their relationship at that point where, there's so much resentment on his side for her going nuts and abandoning him. It's such a there's so many layers to that scene. This scene where Sarah Connor is confronted with her unborn child as a grown man has none of that subtext. There's nothing special about it. They're just like, oh, hey, it's you.
But here's the thing, and now that we're sort of talking about it, this is the sort of difference and why the characters in this film in those moments are sort of, no matter what we do, set up to fail in our eyes. Think about it this way.
Yeah.
We have all this knowledge as an audience member in movies that we've been watching forever, where we've had that moment where Sarah Connor in T2, why there's so much gravitas is she actually gave birth to John, raised him for a while, didn't go insane, but was called insane, then got him ripped away. Now he resents her. There's this whole thing. Let me finish this thought.
Yeah.
And then now this is just Sarah Connor in this timeline knows her son will grow up to be the leader of the resistance. So she knows he's important.
Yeah.
But she hasn't had him yet. So, okay. Then she meets a dude that's like, oh my God, it's your son. And she has a little bit of an emotional response as you kind of would to meeting I'm saying a little bit, she looks confused and concerned and says, John, whatever. And then she reacts when he gets shot, and then whatever. I'm not going to defend the writing of this film and how that moment is sort of portrayed. What I will say is there's so much gravitas from an audience perspective for that moment because we've lived with these characters in multiple iterations for over 25 years.
Yeah.
Okay? That moment for that character would not be so fucking just gut-punchingly huge where it would be played out as a moment like Sarah Connor in Terminator 2 checking for bullet holes, that sort of thing. It wouldn't work.
But I think the thing is that in Terminator 2, James Cameron plays that scene like he could do the scene the same way that they did in this film where they just kind of meet and go, oh, okay, like we got to keep going. You know, but he doesn't. He pauses. He gives them a moment.
No, I understand that, but there's no moment to give in this scenario, which is what I'm saying.
There could like
why though? She doesn't know this dude.
She doesn't know this dude, but she knows that this is her unborn child. What if wouldn't?
But she was confused in the beginning, she didn't even know.
If you saw your unborn child, who you knew was going to come into existence,
right,
suddenly appear in front of you, wouldn't you be a little bit more surprised, a little bit more curious about this person? Like, what do they look like? Do they have my nose?
I wouldn't believe it, and she doesn't quite believe it.
But the scene moves so quickly without any gravitas that it just feels like, right. Oh, here's my son.
I'm just saying, yes, and I agree to that to a point. I'm saying there's not a lot of gravitas to. I mean, yes.
No, what you're saying is that there's no gravitas because the characters don't know each other. What I'm saying is that if the film was written better and put together better, that gravitas could be there, but it just seems unimportant to the filmmakers. Which is not something that James Cameron. I feel like I'm like making James Cameron out to be some kind of god. He has not made
back then. He was
every film he made isn't great, and he's not like an ultimate filmmaker. But I'm just saying what he did with Terminator 2 was so good.
Sure,
compared to what this does, with Terminator Genisys, this just feels like a sausage factory.
Look, you want to debate what scenes are better. Obviously, Terminator 2 scenes are better. What I'm saying is they didn't focus on that, and yeah, they could have, but that's again not the movie they're making. And that moment doesn't. It's in my opinion. You could play it with a masterful filmmaker. You could play it in that direction, but it doesn't need or deserve that in the film that they made.
Okay, well, here's another thing. The ending of this film has the Terminator say something along the lines of, protect my Sarah. And it's like an odd moment because the Terminator, he basically claims ownership of her like a father.
Sure.
And that moment is meant to have weight to it. It's meant to, give you the moment at the end of had at the end of Terminator 2 where you cry. But that moment just falls completely flat and you're just like, what? Wait, what? Because we don't have that kind of these two characters don't have that kind of relationship in the film for us to kind of carry the weight of.
Well, no, I would disagree with that only because those two characters, again, you can't just be like Terminator 2 is so great, so this movie's not as great. Well, yes, we know that.
That's not what I'm saying at all.
I know, but listen,
I'm saying Terminator 2 is great because it takes the time to do these things.
Sure.
And Terminator Genisys isn't because it doesn't even care about those things.
No. I think the Terminator Sarah relationship is one of the few things it tries to care about.
It tries to, but it just doesn't.
I think it does.
The writing isn't there. Like
no. Let's get into the writing. I think this is an important thing too. The writing, in my opinion, between the Terminator and Sarah is fine. It shows me that they've known each other for a long time. They have a shorthand. They have a rapport. They care about each other. The writing in the film tells me this, and I understand it. Could it be more nuanced, and could it be a more beautiful relationship? Sure.
Could it be more elegant?
The whole fucking movie could be more elegant. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But now let's get into any time, and this is my true, and I feel like we're going to bounce back and forth, not even back and forth, just we're going to both hit the same ball into the wall over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Anytime a human in this movie talks to another human, it feels so much more jilted than when a machine is talking to a machine or a machine is talking to a human. I don't know why.
Yeah.
The dude that got to play Kyle Reese needs to just stop.
I don't think it's his fault, though. Like
every film he's been in, he's been that dude, and that dude is the most boring dude to me ever. I've never seen him not be that dude. I'm a dude, but I'm confused, and oh wait, I'm important, and I care about you, but I'm still, I'm gonna have my moment. Like he's the quintessential action paint by numbers bullshit guy.
Like we have to talk about these two films in relation to each other because they're the same characters. But look at Michael Biehn in Terminator 1, who played the same character. He was he was like suffering from PTSD. He was wiry. He had been through shit.
Yeah.
Like
this guy felt like he came off an Abercrombie and Finch fucking photo shoot.
Exactly. Yeah. There was no sense of the war to this
that's
guy.
just I guarantee you, what's that actor's name? Do you know?
Jai Courtney.
I guarantee you that Jai Courtney was like the fifth choice in this film. Like I guarantee you people read the script, saw that it was bad, then were like, nope, not doing it. Nope, not doing it. Nope, not doing it. And they went to him eventually. There's no way he was their first choice.
But you see what I'm talking about here is that even the scenes where we're redoing the first, what we saw in the first film,
right?
They carry so much weight in the first film, whereas they feel so perfunctory and like throwaway in the second film. And it has to do with casting, it has to do with acting, it has to do with writing. It's just the gravity isn't there. The weight of those moments aren't there.
Well, in particular, I do feel the writing for him and Sarah. Sarah's lines are some of the worst lines ever. But I don't think that's
Emily Clark.
Amelia
Clark.
Game
of Thrones. She's
Khaleesi.
Yeah.
God, that's gotta suck to have people not know your name, but only call you a character's name that's actually obsolete in the show that you're watching. Khaleesi is. Look, I love her. I think she's beautiful and talented and fun and I think she has a great presence, and I hope she goes on to do more films. This is not the breakaway film for her I think she hoped it kind of would be to get her into this. Like, I think she saw the opportunity to play Sarah Connor and was like, fuck yes, let me play Sarah Connor. And it feels to me, tell me if you think this is sort of what it is. Yeah. She probably went in with sort of her own take on Sarah Connor and how it should sort of be. And I feel like it just felt like she was being told to be, quote unquote, a combination between Linda Hamilton in the first Terminator movie and Linda Hamilton in the second Terminator movie and John Connor in the second Terminator movie. She talked like a little kid so fucking much when it was convenient, and then tried to be prolific when it was convenient. It wasn't a mishmash. It was just take all these characteristics of three characters and smash them together with this awful dialogue and try to make it work. And she was probably like, oh fuck. Okay.
I mean, the thing is, I think that that character, Sarah Connor, in this film is supposed to be a mismatch of all those people.
It's awful.
But it just doesn't, it doesn't work. I mean, and then again, if you think about Linda Hamilton's transformation from Terminator 1 to Terminator 2, in Terminator 2, she is a Terminator.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, she plays a Terminator, and then she has to regain her humanity, and it is a fantastic performance.
Yeah, you don't particularly like Sarah Connor in the film.
She's kind of nuts
until the very end, kind of. And you know what? I think it's kind of important in Terminator 2 that you're not. I don't think you're supposed to like her. I think you're supposed to realize that she serves a purpose, and it sucks that she's had to give up so much to serve that purpose.
But and it feels like in this film they're kind of trying to do some reverse feminism with Sarah Connor. You know, like she is now the savior, whereas she once was.
Sure.
This was done in Terminator 2, more than 20 years ago, and done better.
Yeah.
Done so much better.
Yeah.
Like everything here feels like, oh, this is an idea. Let's plug in some lines that'll make that idea work.
Well, yeah, but they're the awful lines.
Yeah, they're awful lines. Yeah. It just doesn't work.
There was a scene, I think it was the scene where they were like getting naked, getting ready to go in the time machine again.
It has no weight to it.
And I was just like, they're talking, and I'm just like, fuck. Like,
think about the scene in Terminator 1 when they're holed up in a hotel room and she has to like tend to his wounds.
Actually, do you know what though? That scene, I just rewatched Terminator 1. That scene is kind of laughable today. It is. It really is. Like, it's not as laughable as that, but you go back and you look at that scene and all of a sudden she's like super moony-eyed and like, I care so deeply for you out of nowhere.
Right. It might have dated from, was it 1986?
Something like that.
7 with that?
Yeah.
But it's still like the intention of that scene carries way more weight.
And I will say
like in here it feels like teen idol version of
and
like
they have no chemistry together in this film. And Kyle Reese and Sarah Connor in Terminator 1 had chemistry. I don't think the moment that they had in the hotel room was earned as well as everything was earned in Terminator 2.
Yeah.
But whatever. This film, back to Genisys, is just fuck, man. And this is maybe you can enlighten me on this, Shahir, because so this film first of all, do you know how much it cost to make 150? You said.
I think it was in the vicinity of 100. I can.
Okay,
as
so
we talk, I'll find out.
huge budget, right?
Yeah.
So many visual effects, so much just action and whatever. And I do have to say, the visual effects in this movie were phenomenal. No. And here's why. Everything to me felt like it had weight.
Sure.
And I'm sorry, in every film, even this summer, and no, you're going to crucify me for this, Mad Max, while it had the best art style I've seen in this film, and the special effects were phenomenal.
Yeah.
This movie, in its own style, again, I don't think the style is better than Mad Max. I'm saying the VFX done in this movie overall, I feel are better. Like from a purely technical aspect of it.
But in that helicopter scene?
Which way? You know what? It's funny. I went to the bathroom during that helicopter scene, so maybe that's fucked up.
That helicopter scene
Was it bad?
It's one of those things where like defying physics.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. What I'm saying is, but like every robot, I guess what I'm talking about is sort of robots fighting and all that stuff. Like it felt to me like, wow, this is in the world. Everything felt weighty. Transformers films haven't been able to do it.
I think Terminator Salvation was surprisingly good in terms of VFX.
No, that's true too. You know what? The only other film I've seen where robots are portrayed with some sort of weight is actually Real Steel.
Right, yeah, I know you love that movie.
And so, like, I don't know, whenever VFX feel like they're really in the world to me, that buys you so much cred with me.
Yeah.
But going back to, so this is what I want you to sort of clear up for me, because, you know, you're a filmmaker as well. How is it that $150 million of pure VFX muscle and splendor, and you have to say, someone loves this franchise. Someone does in this process. A lot of people in this process of making this film must love it. How can the fucking script, the first thing that is done, get so, just be like, yep, this is it? How can that be so fucked up when it's the fucking skeleton to this giant monolith of cash? Like, what? That's the easiest part to fix. Give that fucking script to a filmmaker or a writer that writes well for 2 weeks. Wait 2 more fucking weeks for them to clean that shit. Same story, same points, same everything. Give it to a fucking writer. Like, why can't they do that? That's what makes me angry about this film is you change the dialogue. Yeah. You have a fantastic film.
Yeah. You need a real filmmaker at the
Why?
helm.
Why? You need a writer.
Yeah.
Or maybe, you know what? Maybe you're right. Maybe the script, who the fuck knows? Maybe the original script was brilliant.
Yeah. I mean, I think the idea is great.
It just, that's what gets me. You know how you said you were sad? That's what makes me sad about this is that one step that is, I'm not saying good writing is easy. I'm saying in the grand scheme of the collaborative process, that's easy to do in the beginning and then make everything else around it.
Look, as a filmmaker, it is hard to do. And it's hard, you know, like there's a lot, I can imagine even James Cameron had a lot of pressure to like meet a deadline, to serve studio notes, you know, to kind of, and maybe the thing is that his particular talent is that he's good at like working under that pressure and coming up with great stuff. Yeah. Whereas this feels a little bit like there's a lot of studio pressure to get this film made. I know there's a timeline on when they can make these films because the rights revert back to James Cameron.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So
that's interesting.
So there's a timeline pressure.
Do you think he'll do another Terminator movie?
I don't think he will.
I don't think he will.
No,
either.
he's in Avatar land now. Yeah, whatever. But so, you know, it feels like bowing to that kind of pressure and you know, like 100, you know, these movies have to come out really quickly now. And I remember reading an article a while back about VFX companies complaining that they called it the War of the Worlds effect because War of the Worlds had amazing visual effects and they were done so quickly under such a tight timeline. And what every studio that worked on every VFX house that worked on War of the Worlds said, well, the difference there is Steven Spielberg knows what he's doing and and knows how to use a visual effect. So the reason the visual effects in that film work is that they use sparsely and well. Whereas now, and there's a really interesting video that came out on Vimeo. It's called the Weta effect. Now, if you don't know,
I watched that. Yeah. Where we talked about the Hulk.
It talked about the distinction between visual effects as they were emerging. So, for example, the T-1000 to where it is now. And the really good example is in this film, we realized John Connor is a Terminator, you know, like, you know, is a new breed of Terminator. And every Terminator film since T2 has been like, let's introduce a new breed of Terminator.
Yeah, which is neat.
You know, the Terminatrix or, you know, there was a hybrid in Terminator.
She grew her boobs.
there was a hybrid in Terminator Salvation. When there's no magic to John Connor's Terminator, where, you know, like there's no like, oh my God, that I've never seen that before. It's kind of like
right. You've seen it in something else before. Like I liked it. I liked this sort of nano-magnetic sort of being. Like magnetism was kind of his thing. It was all a bunch of tiny little parts. Like I like that.
Yeah.
And it's a natural progression from liquid metal.
But were you in awe when you saw it?
I was in awe when they did clever things with it. For instance, I thought the MRI scene when they trap him in an MRI was really smart and good. Like I thought that moment, because they were in a hospital and you were working with what they got. Like I think that moment was great, and it helped pay off sort of. And pay off is a loose word, but helped sort of explain the end of sort of why things happen. With physically with that Terminator and how he interacts with things.
So here's the just from a writing point of view, and you can go in any direction with this. That happens right the second we find out that he's a robot, right? Like the very first second. So it's like he's a robot in a hospital who happens to be next to an MRI, a magnetic resonance imaging system.
Well, I'm trying to remember. They find out about it in the parking lot. I don't remember how they got back into the hospital.
I think it happened right in the hospital. And what I'm saying is, like, think about that. So they're like, oh, we found his. They find his weakness right away. Whereas think about in Terminator 2. Again, I'm going to harken back to that. He's a liquid metal thing, and it's only through this liquid nitrogen thing that happens at the end that they start to figure out some of his weaknesses, and it comes right at the end of the film after they've tried a bunch of things with him.
I will say this, and please correct
me
if I'm
wrong. The liquid nitrogen is a little bit convenient.
Well, it's also convenient, and them crashing into a steel mill off the highway is a little convenient, and that they had. This is what I like about Terminator 2's ending. While everything is convenient, they still went into the entire plan that they had not knowing how to deal with the T-1000. Yes, he sees them blow him up when he's frozen.
Yeah.
They don't know he's going to come back, but he does. Okay, great. That's another cool, like, aha, monster's back.
Yeah.
Like, I like that. That's good. Then there's the moment, like, here's the thing. They don't really know if liquid steel is going to kill him. Hell, they don't really know he's going to fall into the liquid steel until the last moment. Yeah. They just get lucky liquid steel kills him.
The way that the film sets up the parameters of what the T-1000 is and what he can and can't do over time, like, really helps us when we get to that scene, because you're like, oh shit, there's liquid nitrogen here. I bet you that'll freeze him. And then when he shoots him,
but they never set up anything with liquid nitrogen.
No. I'm saying for the audience, when like liquid nitrogen falls, you're like, oh, that might do something to him. It got my brain thinking that way because I'd been set up to what the Terminator was, or what the T-1000 was. When you get to, what I'm saying is, in terms of the writing here, we see this guy for the first time, and all of a sudden we know his weak point is magnets because he's in an MRI room that they turn on, and it's like it just doesn't have that kind of me thinking through the problem and going, oh yeah, this might work. I would
say, honestly though, I bet you we could time this too. I would say that the moment between sort of, because again, you don't really know, I don't even remember when you see that this tanker says liquid nitrogen. I don't think you see it until it actually starts cracking. I think you just see they're in a tanker truck, and then it crashes and you see liquid fall out and you're like, what the hell? And you see it splash.
It actually it's set up earlier. Like you see the liquid nitrogen tank. Because I've looked at this film from a writing point of view. The liquid nitrogen tanks, they pass it on the highway. Then the driver stops and gets shot by the T-1000 and taken over, and then he drives it along. So it's not like it just comes out of nowhere.
Sure. I'm saying, but like liquid nitrogen, then you don't know what's going to happen with it.
Yeah,
you don't.
No, you don't. And it could have gone in any direction.
I'm saying the time between when the stuff hits the T-1000, you start sort of seeing him, what it does to him, and the time where you find out John Connor's a Terminator, and then you see the MRI thing. And again, Terminator 2 does it better, but I bet you the timing is pretty similar.
I feel like the amount of time that the film sets up the rules and parameters of the T-1000 to get us to the liquid nitrogen scene is better.
Okay, sure. We're running out of time here, so let's just kind of go through a little bit more of the things we thought here. So I guess we kind of covered why we think the movie exists. You say it exists, basically as a cash grab.
No, and I think you made a really good point about this story idea, which is that I'm not giving the story idea enough credit. I think it's a very clever take, but it's not executed very well.
Oh, it's executed very poorly.
And it doesn't follow through. Like it seems, and then this idea that, like later in the film, you realize that Skynet is now something akin to Google or Facebook, It's that's a...
Well, I mean, look, I'm not going to argue with that. That's a natural progression. They make one really interesting point that, again, because the film is not made greatly, sort of falls by the wayside. And that is that, like, back in the original timeline, people were very like, no, this is my life and no fate but what we make for ourselves, and I'm this important individual and blah, blah, blah. And now in our day and age, with social media and networking and the cloud and like all this stupid shit, like the film even says it like, before we were fighting against this, now everyone's just inviting it in. Like, and that was a great moment for me, but again, it doesn't do enough with it. It doesn't pay it off. So I feel like that's sort of stumbling or falling into a great moment that it didn't mean to have.
I think the idea is there, but it's just not executed well.
Right. I lucked into a larger idea, I think.
And I think like I actually kind of like that idea.
Yeah,
I think it's good. And I like you say, I like the timeline shifting idea.
Something I disliked was the whole like, oh, now Skynet is Doctor Who. Like, I'm not the actor who plays Doctor Who.
Yeah.
And they only use him for like 3 seconds. And before in the marketing, they were super secretive about who this character was going to be. And you're just like, shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
Like, you spoil the entire film, and this person who has maybe 4 minutes of screen time is your big like, whoa. Like,
and it's a reveal that they did in Terminator Salvation as well. They gave Skynet a voice in that film.
Just don't. Skynet is so much scarier if it's not a voice.
I would have liked it if this film had gone Back to the Future Part 2 on us and had them revisiting the scenes from the first film.
Right, which it does in the first third of the movie. And the first third of the movie, and it's funny, I watched Terminator 1 after I watched this. The first third of the movie, when Kyle Reese goes back and things haven't been sort of fucked up yet, or he doesn't quite know, it's super fun. And even the scene where, and I loved the scene where old Arnold fights, young Arnold fights old Arnold, let's say, from Terminator 1. That scene, whether or not, whatever, how it gets there, like, is pretty fucking cool. And it did a lot. I was very impressed with how real they got young CG Arnold to look.
Yeah,
there's a slow-mo shot of him sort of turning his head like he does in the first film, and it's pure CG.
Yeah, I'm not even sure how they did that, but
and
it's impressive.
Like you see hair, and it's funny because I noticed one hair on CG Arnold like sticking out, and I was like, why did they sort of do that? It looked natural, but I was like, that's a weird choice.
Yeah.
And then I looked at Terminator 1 shot, and it's the same. Like they had someone just studying and tracing that. Like it was amazing.
It makes you go, well, maybe there's a future for Arnold as Terminator.
Arnold, when the second that we can break the uncanny valley and we will make photorealistic films.
If that was a CG shot, they kind of broke the uncanny valley.
Yeah,
for me.
but they can't keep doing it. Like it's easy for Arnold because he's not emoting.
Yeah.
Like the second you do smiles, the curves of the mouth are what really break people from. Because we can do eyes nearly perfectly.
Yeah. So yeah, it's. I mean, I do think that stuff is kind of interesting, but again, it's not given the weight.
I do like your idea of sort of Back in the Futuring it and sort of like going in, but then there's like multiple versions. I don't know.
I mean, yeah. Look, this film jumps. So they go, okay, 1984. They suddenly like do what they need to do in 1984, and they're like, let's go to 2017, and it's like. I think a more interesting film, and maybe I'm wrong about this. There's two things that I think were more interesting. And maybe the Sarah Connor Chronicles did this, and I don't know.
And there's a throwback to when they go to 2017 being thrown into a highway, naked, whatever. That happened in Sarah Connor Chronicles, and I really hope it was sort of like a moment, like a throwback to it, because I really liked the Sarah Connor Chronicles till the end.
I didn't see the Sarah Connor Chronicles.
It's really good. First season, watch it.
Okay, but I liked the idea that that Sarah Connor was raised by a Terminator.
It's awesome.
Is that in the Sarah Connor Chronicles?
Nope.
See, now I kind of wish that they'd done that film.
I know, that'd be fun.
Do that film. I'm more interested in seeing, it's kind of just alluded to, and I'm like, I don't care about this John Connor, Kyle Reese thing. I care. The film's like emotional punch is Sarah Connor and the Terminator.
And something where it lets that emotional punch fall flat, I think, in this film is they. In a, and we'll get into this in a second, but in a grasp to make this into a trilogy, they leave us with a couple very important hanging questions. One, why or who sent Arnold back to Do you think the film sits? It basically asks that question, but it doesn't. No, they're leaving. It doesn't set it up.
Does it set it up in a way that makes you go, I really want to find that out?
Yeah, because I was watching it and I was saying to myself, if they don't pay this off in this film, I'm going to be so fucking pissed.
Yeah.
And they didn't, and I was pissed.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's very important. And there's another T-1000 that we never see in the backstory fighting whatever. And yeah, whatever. Here's the thing. I have a theory about it, and if they do this, I will be so fucking mad.
Yeah.
If they pull a goddamn Matrix and make it so Skynet fucking sends the Terminator back, so it has to do this infinite loop of this is how the universe has to be and bullshit, I will fucking flip my lid. Like it's see, that's the problem with time travel stories, especially ones that are so long, 25 years in the making. Even when you reboot or sort of side boot, as these sort of things are, you fuck up. Like time travel, because it's so theoretical, yes, you can do anything you want, but also because you can do anything you want, God, it can get really fucking stupid.
Yeah.
Anyway, so let's just talking about sequel building and all that crap. Like they have a mid-credit scene, which means nothing. It just like the Skynet building got destroyed at the end, but then oh my God,
this movie ends on such a like who cares kind of note.
If they just figured out a way to tell me who sent Arnold back, I would be like, great, they did it, yay! Like at the end of this film,
but instead they're like, we've got to make a sequel. Well, you got to want to come back to see it, right? Right? Am I right?
Yeah.
You want to see more of this, right?
No, I don't.
That's my old uncle again.
And that's where I will agree with you. I don't want to see more of this. I want to see more Arnold as a Terminator when we can.
Yeah.
But I don't want to see this. I don't want to see what happens next with these particular characters. Again, I think maybe given a different director, Khaleesi Sarah Connor could be something special. I think Kyle Reese, the actor, again, I'm sorry, but he's fucking terrible. And the writing, they need a new fucking writer. Like whoever came up with the concept of this, kudos, because it's a fun concept. It's just I can't even say it was delivered poorly. The concept wasn't delivered. It says, look at this cool thing. You're not going to get it. Yeah. And you're like, fuck, but it's right there. I can almost, nope. Let's talk about bullshit timelines and try to get people naked in a room together. And you're just like, fuck. Oh, let's get young Kyle Reese and all. God.
It feels like filmmaking by committee. I don't know what
absolutely.
I don't know what the politics of it were, and this is not to suggest that Terminator 2 was like an auteur, driven thing. Who knows how it all happened?
Here's the thing.
But this does feel like filmmaking by committee.
I absolutely agree. I think the only way you make a film like Terminator 2 is by being such a strong presence. And some people have said James Cameron is an asshole.
Yeah, I've heard that. I don't know.
But when you have this power and this sort of just, this is my fucking film, you sons of bitches. Like, you need that sort of love and sort of mama bear mentality to really make something so ridiculous as the Terminator mean something. Yeah. And this film does not have that. No one, the director, the writer, whatever, it doesn't feel like any of them could claim ownership of this at all, because you're right, filmmaking by committee. And I think
it just feels that way. And I think a lot of films get past that somehow, but through, like a Charlie.
I don't think a lot of films do. The reason Mad Max was so good was because it was his fucking movie.
But George Miller invites a lot of collaborators who have a lot to take part in that. And Terminator 2, you got to argue, Stan Winston is as big a collaborator in that film as James Cameron.
I don't mean filmmaking, and I don't think you mean it as well, filmmaking by committee, as in like having a talented person ask his talented friends for their talented help. Yeah. That's different.
Yeah.
I'm talking about literally different offices in a building being like, well, maybe Kyle Reese should run into 11-year-old Kyle Reese. Yeah. And then everyone's like, really? And one guy's like, yeah, that's fucking awesome because I need to make a note. Like, that's what this feels like.
Yeah.
That's not the same thing. Like this.
And I just don't want to suggest that that's necessarily what happened, but it certainly feels that
feels
way.
like it.
Because there's like having been making stuff recently, I'm amazed that any film gets made.
Of course.
And even though I criticize this film in particular, I am always in awe at a film of this scale and size and magnitude gets finished and looks like a like a film. I should always make that clear.
It's very easy to sit here and sort of
in judgment, but it's like it's amazing that these things even happen.
But the reason we can sit here in judgment is because people somehow, not this film, but people managed to pull it off.
Yeah.
And that's why we can call.
And we should champion the films that pull it off and make something great. And
Avengers, I brought it in on the only podcast about Terminator Genisys. I brought the Avengers in at a good moment. And with that, we're basically out of time. So let's just say this. Final thoughts: Should people see Terminator Genisys in your opinion?
Nope. Go see Inside Out.
Okay, I say, I feel like this is so pointless because we're all going to do it. I say, if you like Arnold and you want more of it and you want that sort of nostalgia feel from him, see it. If you don't care about Terminator, if you don't care about the Terminator series at all, don't see this movie.
Well, I think I will disagree because I like Arnold and I like the Terminator and I care about the Terminator franchise. And I still say, do not see this.
Here's
film.
the difference. I don't care about the Terminator franchise. I care about Arnold's Terminator.
And I say because you care about Arnold's Terminator, you should not see this film.
I disagree. I think if you like and want to see more and care about Arnold's Terminator, you go see this movie because you're not going to have Arnold around as nothing. Could it have been better? Of course it could be better. We've determined that. But that's it. So Shahir says don't see it. I see it. If you don't, if you like the Terminator, the Arnold's Terminator, not the Terminator franchise, it's very confusing.
And also you need to add the caveat in there. Go see it, but be aware it's a bad movie. That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying, right?
It's a great story with fucking dirt as fuck writing.
So you're saying go see a bad movie?
No, I'm saying go see an okay movie. I'm saying go see an okay movie. If you love Arnold's Terminator and you're okay with seeing okay movies, go see this movie. And that's a lot of caveats, which means that you might not want to see this movie. I get that, but I don't think it's fair to say, especially when a film like this can bring up so much discussion because of all of the things we've discussed, that people should not see this movie. I'm saying if you want to vote with your money, don't see this movie. If you have an extra $10 or whatever, wherever you are, and it's a fucking Wednesday matinee and you got an afternoon to kill, who gives a shit? Like that's what I'm saying.
I agree with you, and I think that the conversation we've had is because you and I are passionate about film,
right? Not
passionate about this movie.
Exactly.
I think the conversation we could have about Inside Out could be very
maybe one day.
Yeah.
Maybe one day. But it will not be this day. Shahir, let's end this up. Where can people find you?
Go to my website, www.shahirdaud.com, which is SHAHIRDAUD.
All right, and people can find me at MatthewKroll.com, MatthewKroll.com, to find all of my works and things. You can also find me on Instagram at Skeletor4 PREZ, and at Twitter at EmperorMSK. We also have a Twitter on this beast called at Only Movie Pod, and a Facebook, the only podcast about movies, where you can reach us as well. We're going to try to get back onto a more regular schedule now that our stuff has sort of leveled out. There will be those weeks where we might not make it, but at the same time, maybe we'll do 2 sometime, so it'll sort of even itself out. Also, make sure to email us at onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com for your 2 free movie tickets. They're waiting for you.
2 free tickets.
They're just literally there for you to do nothing except send us a small audio review after you see whatever film you want. But go see a movie. Take a girl or a boy. You like those things.
Yeah.
Come on. Anyway, this has been the only podcast about Terminator Genisys.
Nobody else saw it.
No one else saw it, and you know,
and I'm glad. I'm glad for them. I'm glad nobody else saw it.
I can't say I'm not glad.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's.
Are we sad? Are we crying? Are you crying? Are you melting? And is your thumb up? And you're crying? Dun, 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 dun.
I know now why you cry.
Dun, 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 dun.
And it's because James Cameron did not direct this film. I order you not to go!